Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks.
So this is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks to have a brief discussion about these reparations task force. We're looking at the Detroit one, but they got it in California. They got it in Evanston. Fulton County in Georgia was trying to do one. None of them make any sense. Not one of them. Just as a disclaimer, the California reparations push came out of my show and Yvette's show. You can go watch shows on our channel where the intern, Maureen Simmons, shout out to her, went down and pushed for that. I testified as the lead expert, but it was to push the federal government. None of this, because this don't even make sense. None of the reparations task force have the means, the money, the know-how to actually do a national reparations program. Largely what I believe it is a way to avoid reparations. So I want to get into this discussion briefly. Towards the backside of the show, I'm gonna cut in 30 minutes of a show from 2021 and let you guys watch that about Evanston and just explaining how nonsensical the Evanston project that NARC and Cobra were pushing is, both on the scale of amount, which was nearly zero unfunded, but they were doing news stories, and who they were targeting, which wasn't ADOS people, it was just Africans and boomers primarily, so older, anybody Black. But let's talk about Detroit to give some context. We got people all across this country coming in here, and Detroit's first ever reparations task force was introduced. We have a picture. People are loving to take pictures, but they're not telling us amounts. So if these people lost hundreds of billions of dollars, is your city prepared to write a check for hundreds of billions of dollars, and you're just deciding how to actually give that out? Or are you just taking pictures and you don't know what you guys are talking about? Because if you're just taking pictures, you're actually standing in the way of a national reparations push. Shout out to the ADOS Foundation for the claim to name. That's where people should be focusing on, getting us disaggregated to get the data from their cities of how people were impacted. But that's not sexy. That doesn't have the word reparations task force. And you don't get to take these pictures. And also, we don't know who these people are. So we're looking at this thing, and I'm not trying to attack these people. I just don't see what we're talking about here. For Detroit's first ever reparations task force introduced. And this is what we got here. Okay. So do we have any nationally renowned economists? Do we have any attorneys who may have argued in the Supreme Court, let alone who have discussed this at a very high level in terms of economics? Do we have medical professionals, psychological professionals? Who are these people? This random handful that the mayor appears to have picked out. This is not a diversity program, and I don't have no problem with them doing equity programs, but call it that. Don't call it a reparations task force, just call it an equity program where you're just trying to help the poor or somebody in your city and do your job as city council members or the mayor. What this has become is a way to avoid the national multi-trillion-dollar demand of ADOS in the favor of optics and pictures. And I want everybody to see it because you need to start complaining in your cities. And I'm not talking about getting violent, physical, or argumentative in the sense of not being productive, but I'm talking about letting these people know that this is not reparations. And the media has been one hand in. If we look at the Evanston project, it's to me tantamount to being collapsed. It was collapsed the day it was announced. It was never funded, or it was unfunded, and then it had this nominal program. It was only targeted to like old Black boomers using weed tax. We'll talk about that in a second, which largely came from younger Black people. So we paying reparations to the old Blacks instead of the city, instead of the white folks who stole from them. Come on. I want to talk about it, but I did a couple tweets, and I want to get through this section because I'm going to get to the Evanston section, and you're going to get a chance to see that from 2021 show. It's about a 25-minute section. But I want to talk about this Detroit reparations to give you some context. I have the budget. I have a couple tweets to explain how nonsensical it is, not just in Detroit, but across this nation to do local city level reparations projects. It makes no sense. You have cities that largely are not doing the services that they're supposed to be doing, from potholes to trash pickup post-COVID, and they're jumping over to talk about reparations when they're not talking about reparations. They're just talking about equity, in my view. You cannot effectively do, and I want to, and it says, but Detroit sees budget shortfall in 5 years. This is the article I included. You can go look for it yourself. You cannot effectively do reparations at the local level. Many of these cities have not filled potholes or don't have proper trash pickup and are using the announcement of reparations as grandstanding. So we're going to announce reparations. You remember the Los Angeles did the same thing, and it was like, whatever happened is just equity, and you take the pictures and then you pose and you let the local news and sometimes even the LA Times or the New York Times cover it because they don't want to talk about reparations. While they give billions and billions to Ukraine, they don't want to talk about a multi-trillion-dollar debt to ADOS, American descendants of slavery, not black people, ADOS people. So they're using these optics to make it seem like everything's going on. People are smiling, but they're not telling us why they're smiling. I also want to know, are people being paid to be on these task forces? And that should be public record. It should be public record what these people are being paid to be on these task forces, because I believe these task forces just cover up reparations. Can I get into the discussion? I see y'all in the chat. I got Memphis in here, Atlanta. I got people all across this country. Somebody said that's my local city. Shout out Dave Hunter. Hopefully we can get into this discussion. You cannot effectively do reparations at the local level. Many of these cities have not filled potholes or don't have proper trash pickup and are using the announcement of reparations as grandstanding. These localities have little to no money to pay reparations. So they'll have, $10,000. We saw that with Evanston. They're giving the little homeowners $20-some thousand, and they're going to pick 8 of them, and they can't get the cash. They got to get it in home, and then they got to pay taxes on it. And it's basically not reparations. But they took all the pictures like they were literally giving them a multi-trillion-dollar debt to fill up and make them in accordance with what they should have had if they were made whole back in the late 1800s. These localities have little to no money to pay reparations they owe and are filling task force with people that won't lead protests when it's exposed. So the question becomes, once it comes out, because it's going to come out that they can't do reparations, are these 12 people or so going to protest in the front? Or are they in line and tied in with the mayor where they're not going to say anything? They're just going to get frustrated and be quiet because they don't want to mess up their reputations at the local school, a university, or trying to get a position with the mayor there. I mean, the governor there in Michigan, or even say Biden and Kamala. So they just kind of using this as a stepping stone. But this is not a careerist moment. This is a moment about demanding reparations, and you might not understand the topic. So you should bow out if you don't understand reparations, but you might not even know that you don't understand reparations. So we're here today to explain that. Can I get to it? None of this makes sense. These people are just, to me, they just getting checks. But, we got to ask, what are you being paid? Nobody's asking that. Basic clarity. And our filling task force with people that won't lead protests when it's exposed. The entire reparations project is a push on trillions from the federal government, not local pictures and announcements. Look for yourself. Detroit will have a budget shortfall by 2027. Detroit sees budget shortfall in 5 years. So you have a city that has a budget shortfall that now has announced reparations, largely probably for the mayor to get more black votes, but they're never going to actually have any means to actually provide the scale of reparation that they're owed. Because reparations aren't like equity programs. It's not based on what you feel like doing. It's supposed to find out the exact amount that was taken on a large scale and pay that immediately, not like when you feel like it, like over the next 100 years. They have no means to accomplish that. So when we're talking about this, we're looking at a discussion where we got to look at who we're talking about. We're looking at Detroit specifically. It's pothole season, and Michigans are among the nation's worst. The whole state. This is what the Detroit local government needs to focus on for their people. Now, no way am I saying filling potholes are reparations. What I am saying is that you can't talk about reparations until you fill the potholes, until you do the pipes. That's why the federal government has to do it, because it's not your job to be talking about no national reparations that requires a large scale investment just to figure out who's owed, just to figure out what the amount is, and then to hold accountable companies that have no bearing like they don't respect you. I mean, like, what are you going to do if a major manufacturer that you get tax money from or whatever from owes billions in reparations? No, we need the federal government to enforce that. Not to mention, You guys are getting a lot of money from sports gambling. Let's talk about that in a second. So the city of Detroit's big boost came from sports gambling. This, gambling by phones and all that I just covered. So y'all gonna do sports gambling and get taxes from that, and then try to pay reparations to the ADOS people being exploited by sports gambling? That sounds like the weed with the Evanston paying the reparations. Okay, so that's what we doing. This is what Detroit local government needs to focus on for their people. I would say, this is a direct quote from this article, it's pothole season and Michigans are among the nation's worst. I would say it's worse this year. I believe this was last year's article. Hereford said, my car got severely out of alignment and my wheel bearings were loose. It was $600 car bill. Who can afford less than $600 than ADOS people? I need you, let me say this. I need you, these people, to actually fix these potholes so ADOS people don't have broken car wheels. Instead of this whole idea that you're going to grandstand about reparations. Can we talk about it? Can we talk about it? This is what the Detroit local government needs to focus on for their people. I would say it's worse this year, Hereford said. My car got severely out of alignment and my wheel bearings were loose. It was $600 car bill. Michigan's roads are rough. The state is ranked 10 for having the worst road conditions in the nation, and they are underfunded. And they are underfunded. The Michigan Senate Fiscal Agency estimates it will cost $2 billion a year to fix the state's roadways. More than a third of Michigan's roads are considered in poor or mediocre conditions, and a 2019 study claimed Michigan's bad roads cost drivers another $648 per year in repairs. Again, those spacing issues came from directly pasting from the article. But in the end, you're telling me, these people are telling us that a state that is underfunded on its potholes is about to pay billions in reparations to its local ADOS blacks without even understanding or assessing ADOS. It don't make no sense. When you look at a city, this is political education. You have to ask yourself where they get their money from. Well, the big people is the state, and the state gets its money from the federal government. So why are we going two spigots down? Why would we go not to the state? Why would we go not to the federal government? Why would we go to the city that already can't fix potholes? What are the 6 sources of local government revenue? Intergovernmental revenue from the state, from the federal government, property taxes, utility revenues, sales taxes, bonds, other sources of income. What, like donations? So when you get down here, bonds and donations, that's when you're doing bad. You're looking at sales taxes. White folks ain't finna let you use no sales tax at the city level or no property taxes at the city level to pay no reparations. We saw that with Evanston. Evanston was forced to frame it in the context of weed sales taxes, which white people know would be primarily coming from black people paying their own reparations, which make the picture does not make any sense. Your big source is going to be the intergovernmental revenue, and it's not going to come from the state. It's going to come from the federal government. I need you to understand, because none of this makes sense. And I'm using Detroit as one example of how they're announcing local reparations, and there is no such thing as local reparations, especially when you get down to towns like Evanston, or if it's whatever they call it a city, but if you look at the scale, it's more of a town type of thing. They're just saying anything to you guys at this point. There is no local reparations. When I did let me pull this up. Let me see if I have it. So I testified as the lead expert. What was birthed was me and Yvette Cornell triggered the national reparations discussion. Our focus was the federal government. The goal from California for me was only the classification, which I had already in the bill when I testified, of ADOS, so that it's not going to black people in general, because it shouldn't. Why should somebody from Haiti or from Jamaica or from Nigeria, for that fact? In no way am I being xenophobic, but if they came here in 1973, you shouldn't get no reparations from us. You should go fight for that. I'm talking about reparations for slavery and Jim Crow. That's what I'm talking about. That comes from the federal government. That comes from the federal government. The goal was to pressure using the biggest state in economically against the federal government to get the classification right and to start to have the national discussion. What it has been bastardized to is this. And this is the craze of just not understanding basic politics. Chair of California Reparations Committee demands a Bureau of African American Affairs to arrange payments of $225,000 per year per person ahead of group's public meeting. But then in the article, Camilla Moore said that the money is maximum and only applies to people who suffered housing discrimination in 33 to 77. So those are people that are either dead because they be like 110 to people that are like 80s. So you're again doing boomer reparations for anybody black that suffered a discrimination back then in California, and then framing it as though you're doing 225, and then the number doesn't even make sense because it's just a random number. But it also doesn't make sense because of, hold on, oh, we're gonna see that. That's the Boston. It doesn't make sense. That's the Boston Reparations Task Force. We'll come to that in a session. Boston Task Force. This is the lady on the task force. They picked her. We'll talk about it. But let me see if I got the article. But basically, California has a shortfall right now. There it goes. California's budget shortfall could triple if recession hits, state experts say. Governor Newsom's administration has said it does not plan to tap into the state's reserves, which hold $35.6 billion. Instead, will wait until the spring to determine if doing so will be necessary. So they have a massive budget shortfall and $22.5 billion budget deficit. But we just going to announce this, and then we're not going to say real loud that it's really for people that are like over 80. So we're doing boomer reparations. And it's not really reparation, it's an equity program. It's like housing discrimination equity program. But we're going to take all the pictures. And that's not what I was talking about. I have no idea what you guys are doing. I just know you're not loud enough. I have no idea what they're doing in Detroit. I just know it don't make no sense. I'm just telling you that they can't fill their potholes, and they talking about a reparations task force. And that is the issue that an ADOS person will confront before anything, is they will be broken because of these potholes. I live in California. We fill our potholes. We fill them in Los Angeles. Detroit dummied up current budget to avoid necessary cuts. Our message is, you can't just keep doing this, Buss said, noting she optimistic Mayor Dave Bing and the Detroit City Council will work to draft a budget that realistically addresses the city's financial status. Now, this is an older article, but you look at it, and they've had significant issues with their budget. We've seen shortfalls with their budget, and I use this because this is one time that they actually charted it out. A lot of times the cities, I feel, aren't as clear as they need to be showing the budgets. State revenue sharing, monetization of a wind tunnel, all other, general property tax, municipal income, utility users tax, casino wagering. This is a more recent article, 2022. Detroit City Council approves 2023 fiscal year budget. After several clerical delays and a lack of quorum, Detroit City Council approved the annual budget for the 2020 fiscal year about 11 p.m. Thursday. Council voted 8-0 in favor of $1.2 billion general fund spending plan after weeks of deliberations and hearings. Council member Gabrielle Santiago Romero was absent after testing positive for COVID. But urged her colleagues during the public comment portion of the budget to pass the budget. The budget, subject to mayoral approval, included $50,000 to increase outreach for disability, $100,000 for a strategic plan for immigration affairs. So if they're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for things like immigration affairs, what do you think reparations is going to be? $210,000 like Evanston? $50,000? It is a grandstanding picture if they don't tell you from day one that they're talking about billions of dollars. And they can't talk about billions because their whole budget is $1.2 billion. The mayor said online gaming taxes helped offset cities' losses. It brought in $26 million last year. So we talking about Kevin Hart and Jamie Foxx and the fantasy. So your kid gonna be in there sports gambling to pay reparations to his grandmama. Can we talk? How about you just block the online gambling? Do that for these black families. Fix the fact that the property taxes are being fixed and adjusted in Detroit to take their homes. Y'all need to focus on that and potholes. Can we talk about it? I want to have this discussion. It's not going to be long because I don't understand these local reparations. How to read your local government's budget. 31 cent public safety, 8 cent transportation mobility, 20 cent neighborhood infrastructure, general government, 7 cent economic development, 14 cent recreation and culture, 8 cent that's the parks, policy administration, 1 cent. Where is the 50 cents that's owed to reparations in your state local budget? It ain't there. In addition, they don't understand reparations is not just a program about money. It is a transformational program about policy. So if your state is getting massive money from exploitation, online gambling, you don't understand that reparations would block the online gambling. Is your task force ready to tell them that that's what we want? That we don't want you to get any more online gambling because we are over targeted by these fantasy football team leagues and things of the sort. And that's one of the things. Are you prepared to say that? And I doubt it. You can go ask them yourself. We want to block online sports gambling. It's affecting the black homes and these young black children too much over on a higher level, and we want it blocked. That's not where it happens. It doesn't happen at the Detroit level. It happens at the federal level. You got a city, talk about it, that's got a boost off of sports gambling, online game taxes. And they, at the same time, are talking about reparations task force. So they're going to take sports gambling money from the grandson, losing his money and his little job money and all that, to give it to the grandma and fixing her pipes, and call it let alone somebody that isn't even ADOS. You're gonna take sports gambling taxes that you got from some little black ADOS kid that gambled because he didn't have no other opportunity, and give it to somebody that isn't ADOS through your budget. And that's reparations. Somebody came in and doesn't understand the discussion, lack of political education. God is a black man. They got an avatar here with a cartoon. Some of y'all need to understand, stop putting cartoons up. You middle-aged. I mean, if that's with the gray beard, you probably like in your late 50s, putting up a cartoon with some shades on. And then your name is God is a black man. None of that. Come on. That's coherent. 100% disagree. Potholes, trash happen. Normally in black areas of the town where they purposely make sure that the black community is starved of resources. So that means that people's cars get broken down more by potholes, and the city needs to do its job first with that, which is real. So you're making my point, but let's finish it. Which is cannon fodder for black community. White people can find money for everything else. They can find money for FBA. Okay. There's no political education here. There's no understanding of budgets, no understanding of what we're talking about, and you just talking. I don't think you grasp the reply. It's not saying potholes are reparations. It's saying that that's what they are obligated to do, and they can't. Meaning meaning these people right here. I need them to fix the potholes so that the people's cars aren't broken. Not that potholes are reparations. And you said the same thing, but then you said you disagree, but you just was agreeing with my point without understanding my point. So you could have just been quiet. I don't think you grasp the reply. It's not saying potholes are reparation. It's saying that's what they're obligated to do, meaning the city of Detroit, and they can't. Thus, there is no reparations task force, only an announcement. They don't have the money for a reparations task force. Maybe they could pay those people a stipend to talk around reparations to keep us from making a national case, but that's about it. It doesn't matter what you disagree with. They don't have any funds to give reparations as they are owed. Giving people in Evanston a couch or fixing a roof is not reparations when you owe them billions. It's just some equity program. Many local cities don't have the means to supply the basic resources local governments are supposed to supply. You are disagreeing with a different point because you don't grasp the conversation. Again, I'm talking about this guy up here. God is a black man who made some point that doesn't make any sense because you don't grasp the conversation. Detroit, come on. Thank you so much, Twin Born. is a local municipality. It's not a budget that has those funds. It will in the end rely on federal government. You just saying white people having money is stupidity and a mark of no political education. Hashtag ADOS. And that's the gap. Again, I testified as the lead expert. The California Reparations Task Force bill came out of my show and Yvette's show. You can go watch the interview with the lady who interned. Shout out to her because she did not get enough credit and they bastardized the discussion. And now they're talking about some weird $225,000 and the state itself has a budget deficit. So you just randomly talking so you can keep getting a stipend or whatever else you're getting. I want to know how much Camila Moore gets. I want to know how much everyone on the task force gets to being on the task force. And I want to ask the question, should you get that on the next year? Maybe the next year should be a donation. You got it for 1 or 2 years or whatever. And then if it extends, you just donate your time. Maybe to do less time, but donate your time. I need you to talk about it and ask these questions because I don't see y'all asking them. Then you got Boston. Boston's task force appoints 2 11th graders and a BLM supporting college student. And this is a picture from the article. And to decide how much money to pay Black community. 2 high school students and 1 college student will serve on Boston's reparations task force. They're basically just throwing this at you guys and your families. High school juniors, shout out to them for being high school juniors. They should not be on the task force for reparations. It is an unserious discussion at that point. High school juniors, Damani Williams and Denelson Fan, as well as 22-year-old University of Massachusetts student and BLM organizer. Again, BLM is directly oppositional to reparations for ADOS. They're talking about some generality reparations, which is more equity program. I need you to understand what's going on. But I mean, I do it in budgets. This is Evanston, you know, the NARC and Cobra, they did this reparations in Evanston, and then they were talking about $25,000 for 10 people, and they didn't have no criteria that went to ADOS. And understand that this is at the same time as Biden actually was talking about U.S. and talks to pay hundreds of millions to families that separated. Government is considering payments of $450,000 per person affected by Trump's administration's zero tolerance policy. In 2018, this is the Wall Street Journal. So they're going to give $25,000, and it's not money. They were going to give it in kind, like fix your roof and you pay the rest. And then you got to pay taxes on it. I'll show you in the show that I'll clip in a second. But they didn't even have the money for that. So it was going to come from weed sales, and then they didn't even have the weed sales. But then you look at the budget from Evanston, it was all like photo ops because it was all stories. And then the actual budget came out in 2020 and all negative. So they set only 250 and they announced it and it wasn't clear. And then they didn't have the 250 and they got 16,000 from other people, but the city didn't give nothing. And that's local reparations in a nutshell. You have them talking about getting it from weed taxes, I guess, after that. Through this weed tax, Evanston is forcing young people that likely lean toward being Black to pay reparations to their grandparents for harms they are a victim of in place of the city itself. This is ignorance as a program. Tax the white homeowners. But you can't do that because your program is built around pacifying the mayor. Understand that this means most people that will be approved for this program are likely older boomers or near that age with homes. Most of the people that smoke marijuana are likely younger. This ends up as a giant generational redistribution of wealth up. That's why you have economists on the panel and not just random people to explain these kind of things. Because ideas that seem genuinely smart can tend to be not that smart. The state government in Illinois did a paper in 2012, and black use of marijuana was 12 points higher in the state. Again, this is Black people paying themselves reparations through a sales tax. Also, ADOS may end up paying the tax so a recent Black immigrant can get the grant. I need you to understand it. I need you to see what we're talking about, but sometimes you can't see it until you see it. So let me cut this show in, and then you'll see that. And please stay tuned in and watch the whole show from 2021 on Evanston. But again, we were tying this back to Detroit and all these task forces across the country that aren't, to me, in any way reparations task force. They're like equity programs using the buzzword of reparations. Please support the channel. Thank you so much, Lisa Bean. And let's watch this thing together, because I'm going to be here to watch it with you this past show.
People trying to get TV shows. I hope that Tiffany Cross lady likes her MSNBC show. Part of the problem that ADOS is running up against is that we're doing a politics that everybody else just jumps in and out of. What you see with Kamala Harris is indicative of a failure in black politics during the last election. While we said down ballot Democrat to ensure that black people still got services, but tried to pressure the presidency to address them, other people said vote for Biden regardless. Let's get into the topic of the day, though. Evanston, Illinois becomes the first U.S. city to pay reparations to black residents. That is the cover of, I believe it was NBC and so many others, the first. Now we're going to dig into the actual plan. We're going to dig into, we're not going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to do it together. We're going to dig into the plan that's on the website. When I look at the plan on the website, I want you guys to notice something on the cover. I've never seen this before. It says draft. You've announced the plan. The plan is gone public, but we still got drafts on the actual website. All right. But when we look at what we have in front of us, what we realize is that either the media got it wrong, the city got it wrong, or NARC then got involved with all of it and messed up the messaging. But somebody in here didn't understand this isn't reparations. Look, when we talk about reparative justice, the word has a trigger to tie it to what? U.S. slavery. That is the key element that we're really thinking about. Now, you can tie in Jim Crow, but we're talking about the people damaged by U.S. slavery and Jim Crow. Now, if you just want to say Jim Crow, your recipient group has to just be people that went through Jim Crow. We'll talk about it later in the discussion. We're talking about things when you look at this thing, when you look at so many things with reparations, what you find is that people don't seem to understand this is a multi-trillion-dollar debt. And the only entity large enough to deal with that, particularly post-deregulation and derivatives and all of the things in the games that were played in the 80s, is government, federal government. Now, I'm not against local, state government pressuring federal government, but don't tell me no housing plan that we've seen before in other cities is reparations just so you can take pictures. Evanston, Illinois becomes the first U.S. city to pay reparations to black residents. 5 things just giving you off the top before I get into the article. Number 1, it's already been done. It's already been done. I'm going to read an article from where they did something similar already. So you're going to do similar program to what they already did. Just call it reparations so you can take some pictures and make it seem like you've done something when in fact you've either done nothing or you might have even done some damage. And we'll talk about how. And we'll get into tax liability and things of the sort. You have number 2. It's not just for ADOS. So you sold it as reparations, which means that people thinking about slavery and Jim Crow, then you made it so the criteria includes everybody under the sun that comes from Africa. I don't know how that's going to hold up legally, but that's how you did it. Everybody that comes from Africa is a recipient group. Okay. It's not for slavery at all. It's just reparations, and we're going to think about Jim Crow. This is the kind of scatteredness you get out of groups that aren't ADOS, that aren't starting with the key element, which is a category for the American descendants of slavery. And in addition to that category, focusing and targeting on pressuring the federal government to release trillions of dollars and also change regulations and laws so that trillions of dollars actually ends up in transformation. And in addition, also has redistribution in a similar form than what we saw in South Africa. I remember being in South Africa and I was housed somewhere where there was a European guy, and he basically had his land taken. They took his whole farm, gave it to a black person. That is the kind of transformation that has to happen here, like on some level. Whether people want to understand that or not, we need to move from just being consumers to actually being producers. And basically all the producing slots are right now occupied. Primarily almost all by white folks, but then there are some other people, we not in there. But when we say we, I'm talking about ADOS people, not just people that came here last year, or like Ilhan Omar came here as a refugee, or even somebody that came here after Jim Crow in late 70s for schooling. No, I'm not talking. I'm talking about people that were brought here under ships for slavery, enslaved, multiple generations here in America, and then put into Jim Crow here in America and never allowed opportunity. That is reparations. When you begin to unpeel that, that becomes something that you actually can get past litigation with if you frame the argument and harden it. The next thing is they have $400,000 for this. They have $10 million overall. We don't even know if that money's going to be there. They always talk about the future. It's still nothing. It's a pittance. But then they have $400,000 on this right now, so they just going to give it to 16 people at lottery. They're not clear what the lottery is even in the document. So it's just going to be 16 people, and then the rest of the people that are basically, they got 13,000 people waiting for Section 8 or something like that. I'm going to read to you in that city. And so, like, instead of helping a bunch of black people get on Section 8 applications or get some counseling services or whatever, they are worried about this. Instead of worrying about potholes, streetlights, and Section 8 application processing, they want to do $400,000 to 16 people and include people that aren't ADOS. Can I talk? This don't make no sense. I just want to make it all make sense so we can get in here. 310-388-3499 is the call in. And also, I want accounting after the $400,000 is distributed. I don't want a dollar going to any consultant or anyone else that has helped to processing fees and all of this. I want the full money to go to these recipients. I want to see that at least. I don't believe it should exist, but I want to see that. I want to see the full accounting after they distribute this and see if 30,000 went to some consultant. Let's see. Evanston, Illinois on Monday became the first U.S. city to make reparations available to its black residents for past discrimination and the lingering effects of slavery. The Chicago Suburbs City Council voted 8-1 to distribute $400,000 to eligible black households. Each qualifying household would receive $25,000 for home repairs or down payments on property. The program is being funded through donations and revenue from a 3% tax on the sale of recreational marijuana. The city has pledged to distribute $10 million over 10 years. Pledge is a funny word. That means that they funded pledge. Qualifying residents must either have lived in or been a direct descendant of a black person who lived in Evanston between 1919 to 1969 and who suffered discrimination in housing because of city ordinances, policies, or practices. This is what the NBC put out. But when you read the document itself, I don't know the failure of the reporter or the person telling the reporter, but that's not what the document says. The document says there's actually a third category that somebody who wasn't there in 1919 to 1969 that comes from Africa can apply as well. And we don't know how many of those people are going to get some slots too. I'm just telling you, none of this is coherent. It's not just that I disagree with it on amount. It's not just that I disagree with it on the type of way that they're giving it out, which is not cash. We'll talk about that in a second. But it also just doesn't make any sense at all. And the one vote against this, and we'll talk about her in a second, the one council member that voted against this, she actually said the same thing. This is not reparations. We've seen these kind of housing programs in other cities. They haven't always went all that well. But what you can't do, which they already did, is slap reparations on a housing program and then call it reparations so you can take a bunch of pictures. Let's take the first caller tonight. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Cynthia.
How are you doing, Cynthia? What's your take on everything?
Oh, well, you know what? I'm appalled. I'm appalled simply because that particular area, I think there's like 16% black folk, and I don't even know how many of those are ADOS anyway. And then
one last thing. Section 8 struggles. So we got a city council that needs to worry about potholes, streetlights, Section 8 processing, and they trying to do reparations for 16 people that may or may not be ADOS, American descendant of slavery. At least 560 Evanston residents receive aid in the form of housing choice vouchers, which subsidize housing units in the private market. But due to federal budget cuts, county officials said they will have to decrease those subsidies and shrink the program. And that's assuming a voucher is even available. Housing Authority of Cook County Communications Director Monique Bond said the waiting list is about 13,000 people long and close to new applicants. So we worried about all of this reparations pictures, and we got NARC taking more pictures. They got more quotes than the actual city and the articles, and none of it's reparations. And people can't get no housing. What do you think?
Oh, it's awful. It's gaslighting, and those individuals that are riding this wave, it's disgusting, and we have to continue to circle the wagon, because all skin folks ain't kin folks, and that's all I'm gonna say. Good
Man, night. That's a caller if I ever had one. Thank you. Man, so what she's speaking to is the house. Let's go back to this house. Let's go back. So they told us that this is reparations. They framed it as $400,000, and then look, they're real unclear, but it's about 16 people gonna get this on a lottery. But the houses are 700,000, 600,000 in the neighborhood. 10% of 600 is 60. That's the down payment. You also gotta have that 800 FICO. You also gotta be able to pay that $5,000 a month. Let's talk. But in addition, how is it reparations if you don't deal with the damage level to the victims? So if the houses are 700 and people were forced out of the houses, and they were, they bought them for $75,000 or $40,000, and they was all cash bought, isn't the damage the $600,000 gap? Part of reparations, as these people clearly don't understand, and I'm talking about the council and also the people they've used to actually assist them, is to deal with the actual damage caused by the injury. It isn't just for you to assess some random amount and then just hand out $25,000 to any black person and then say reparations because it's a buzzword, because Adolph's made it a buzzword in the last 2 years, or pressured Black Caucus members and presidential candidates. Basically, what they've done is just like a switcheroo. This is not even a well thought through housing program. And then they just slapped reparations on it and then just took pictures. Evanston reparations plan is more symbol than substance. This is the Chicago Tribune. Beyond the sprawling Northwestern University campus in Evanston stands a vibrant African-American community. The residents don't live in these luxurious homes near the lakefront. Most of them are working class people who reside in apartments and neat little bungalows on 4 census tracts on the city's west side. Come on. So black people in the apartments. But the first phase of the reparations plan unveiled Monday night was disappointing, bordering on insulting. African Americans won't get a dime in their pockets. The city plans to designate $400,000 funds to a housing program that would award eligible residents up to $25,000. They can use the money as a down payment on a new home or to make repairs to their current one. Let me tell you the problem that they have. I don't think that they even understand the tax code. Now, I'm not speaking on this as a tax expert. I went to Bankrate and actually pulled some tax experts that spoke to this. When you give mortgage assistance, it usually goes under the other income category. So whether you give it to me in cash or mortgage assistance, I got to pay tax on it. The worst part of it is because you don't give it to me in cash, I got to come up with that cash. So if I'm a black old person that just kind of rode the wave and I have enough for my property tax on fixed income, Social Security, you just gave me a $5,000 tax liability, but then didn't let me touch the money so I could partition it out and just use 20 and have the 5 sitting. Let me say it again. You just gave me the potential of things that could come back later to lead to me losing my home through tax liens and the different sort. So like when you go on The Price is Right and you win a car, you got to pay tax on it. It's just not just a gift. That's why a lot of people sell it. The problem here is that you ain't going to be able to just sell the roof that they give you or to fix it in the house. You got to sell the whole house. But this is your house. You're not going to sell it. So you got to pay the tax. Can I talk? Everybody, does that make sense? So they just handed these people a $5,000 bill. The city plans to designate $400,000 from the funds to a housing program that would award eligible residents up to $25,000. they could use the money as a down payment on a new home or to make repairs to their current one. That means 16 people who can prove that they are direct descendants of people who lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969 and experienced housing discrimination are eligible for $25,000 grants. That's only part of it. You have to read the whole thing to actually get the full assessment. This thing actually goes further than that. In their fact section, reparations, not are. This is what we're dealing with in the fact section. Is reparations only for African American Black Evanston residents who are United States direct descendants of slaves? This is the Evanston City, fact section, not ARE, is reparations. No, the program identifies eligible applicants as Black or African American persons having origins in any of the Black racial and ethnic groups of Africa. The person must reside in Evanston at the time of disbursement of funds. Just telling you, it's not just for ADOS people. It's not reparations. Housing program, maybe. Poorly organized, but it's a housing program. It will have little, if any, impact on the lives of the other approximately, this is coming back to the article and from the Chicago Tribune, Evanston reparations plan is more symbol than substance. It will have little, if any, impact on the lives of the other approximately 12,000 Black Evanston residents. It probably won't even make a dent in addressing the economic disparity resulting from the decades of neglect. It's mostly a symbolic gesture with little of the substance the reparation movement hoped for. Supporters of the resolution insist the grants are the best ways to address the city's discriminatory housing practices and create generational wealth. But Alderman Cicely Fleming calls it a housing plan dressed up as reparation. And that's exactly what it is. And that's what NCOBRA and NARC, and they've been running around. They don't really understand the scale of this, nor how you have to be targeted. You have to start with ADOS. You have to have a category just for the people that were damaged, or you're going to run into major problems with litigation. You might run into them anyway, but at least you now have a real chance to prove up why this must exist. There's no reason that a Nigerian should get privileges that a Mexican doesn't in Evanston. There's no reason that Ilhan Omar, as a Somalian refugee, should get privileges that a Filipino doesn't in Evanston. There's every reason that ADOS should, because they were damaged in Evanston and across America when they were brought here. That is how you anchor this. Then you move to the federal government. If you don't have a federal government program or mandate, first of all, that money could lead to major problems for individuals, from tax issues, from tax liens and the like, to also changing their income level. So you got people that might be low income, $25,000, $28,000. You're going to stack a other income of $25,000 on top of them, and they begin to not qualify for possible low income energy programs with their local energy company. They begin to have issues. Maybe they're FAFSA with their children, put some outside of Pell Grants and the like. That's what $25,000 can do if you're not thinking about it right. I'm saying to you, they didn't think about this thing right. I just need to talk. So we got Evanston, Illinois, leads the country with first reparations program for Black residents. Right out the gate, we got Ron Daniels he got his name in here. Right now, the whole world is looking at Evanston, Illinois. This is the moment like none other that we've ever seen, and it's a good moment, said Ron Daniels, president of NARC, which wants to redress at local and federal levels. Before I move forward, let me say this. Let me show you what NARC, the kind of stuff that NARC brought to these people, and Cobra, I don't know which one works for which, but here's something that when you go to you can go to the Evanston, this is public record, and see the plan and the reports. Well, they did a presentation with Cam Howard. Cam Howard, I believe NARC and Cobra, local reparations, right here. When you click it, this come up. This says local reparations, not reparations. A DNA test is a form of reparations. Reparations are any resources, no matter how large or small, no matter how narrow or broadly administered, that is targeted toward repair or healing of current injuries from past harms. We're not talking about reparations in the general sense of the word. We're talking about reparations for America's original sin and Jim Crow. I don't know what these people are talking about. They've done decided that they're going to fix the world with $10,000 or 25 in this case. What we are saying is that you must trigger a transformation in the economic soul of the nation, or all of it don't make no sense. You choose what side of the fence you on. Right now, their side of the fence is going to come trundling down. You're going to have people get $25,000. And again, I'm no tax expert. Bankrate is a financial website. They had a tax expert on there. Let me actually read this thing. I think I have it right here. I want to read it to make sure I get it right. I don't want to jump. Hold on. We not playing. Let me make sure we going to slow everything down. Get it right. Bankrate.com. Is a mortgage payment help taxable? Dear Tax Talk, I am receiving money from my mortgage lender as part of a job loss mortgage protection insurance program. Are these payments taxable, and if so, how would I report them? Dear Karen, I'm sure you had enough bad news when you lost your job. However, more bad news is that the mortgage assistance payments are considered other income by the IRS. The good news is that you can still deduct your mortgage interest. Without a federal program to actually ensure that this money is treated a certain way, you're not going to see black people that somehow randomly were able to hold on to a $700,000 house be able to take in $25,000, whether it's cash or a mortgage assistance, and have it treated differently, is what this expert says. So basically now you have no justification to not give them the $25,000. And understand, the justification that Evanston has been using, I want to read it to you. Why doesn't the city give cash payments for reparations? Due to IRS reporting requirements, the city does not have the authority to exempt direct payments from either state or federal income taxes. You don't have the authority to exempt gifts either. So it don't matter. The actual harder part about what you're doing now, and I don't know if anybody explained this to these local officials, because their job's supposed to be potholes, maintenance of the lights, making sure that these people in the YWCA have blankets. They are not elected to deal with a reparative justice claim. But what they said is that somehow it's just different. Due to IRS reporting requirements, the city does not have the authority to exempt direct payments from either state or federal income taxes. As a result, a recipient will be liable for the tax burden associated with the award. The amount a particular recipient would owe would depend on their overall income, but it could be as much as 24 to 28% owed to the IRS in Illinois. The restorative housing program disbursement of funds would go directly to the financial institution or vendor, which will be responsible for the tax liability, not the resident. So they're telling you that Chase Bank has your house mortgage. They're going to give the money to Chase, and because Chase received it, you don't have no tax liability. That's not what Bankrate just said. I mean, I don't even understand how that's in there. And then NBC, Washington Post, nobody caught this and actually tore this apart. I'm saying to you, you got black people. See, it's better to just give them the 25 at least. I mean, I think it's an awful program. At least then they can partition the $5,000 and then take the 20 and then do whatever they have to do. Hold on. Again, when you go to Price is Right, rent a car, you can sell the car. You give me mortgage assistance or you give me a kitchen, I got to sell the whole house to get out of my tax problem if I don't have that 5. I'm just telling you this is how it all breaks out. I don't know if everybody broke this down for people. Let me take another caller, because I feel like a lot of people got problems. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Ron, and I'm calling from Evanston.
Hey, what's up, Ron? Give me your take on everything.
Well, first of all, Toad, I want to tell you, my friend, I appreciate you and Yvette Carnell greatly. Secondly, everything that you've said thus far about this proposed reparations, Cecil Fleming, which is the alderman that voted against it, has already articulated. Mm-hmm. And ADOS does not have a presence out here in Evanston, and me, myself, and a few other folks, we are going to change that in the future.
Come on. Come on. I love your laugh. You got a lot of soul in your laugh. Go ahead.
Well, that said, Toad, it is exactly what you're saying. It is not reparations. It is a housing program. That's what it is. And that's what ADOS city, unfortunately, you have a tremendous amount of liberals out here in this city that they mean good and they sound good, but there is no teeth behind what they're talking about. In other words, it's double talk. Mm-hmm. And just to say one other thing.
No, don't say one more, don't say one other thing. You stand with me for a couple more another article, because I love what you're saying and you right on the ground. Go ahead.
Well, I would only add that what you're saying, one of the reasons that they resisted cash payments was that tax burden that you're talking about. If you give residents cash, because it was a plan that was proposed on Monday and passed on Thursday, that wasn't an option. They didn't want to put that tax burden on folks out here in Evanston. Now, I'm from Louisiana. I'm ADOS. I'm from Cotton Valley, Louisiana. I've been out here for 30 years, Tone, and I don't qualify for this program. Neither does anyone else that has not been here since 1919. So that excludes, we have a tremendous group out here of Caribbeans. And not to speak bad about them, we have a lot of Haitians, a lot of Jamaicans, a lot of Africans. They don't qualify either. Only ADOS Americans are qualified for this program here in Evanston. That's
wait. Let's slow that down. Let's slow that down, because I think they confused y'all. And this is the problem, is that when they called it reparations, they didn't really make clear what's in the document. Because in the document, it says, listen to this: initial applications will be accepted, reviewed, and funded in the following order. Again, this is the Evanston Local Reparations Restorative Housing Program document. Number 1, an applicant applying as an ancestor. An ancestor. From their definition of an ancestor, let's get it all clear, and then I'll come right to you. I want to read everything clearly. Hold on, let me read everything out loud, and then you can speak. Ancestor, African American or black resident of the city between 1919 and 1969, who may have children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, or other issues defined as direct descendant. An applicant applying as a direct descendant. That's the descendant of an ancestor. But number 3 is where you just jumble it all up and make it not even a reparations program at any level. An applicant that does not qualify as either an ancestor or a direct descendant, however, experienced housing discrimination due to the city's policies, practices after 69. So basically, you said 1 and 2 for no reason. You could have just had number 3 and said anybody black could apply. Because number 3 guts number 1 and 2.
Tone, you're in your articulation, you're exactly correct. I'm only telling you that here, I came to this city in 1989. I don't have a historical lineage to the city of Evanston, so therefore I do not qualify. My friend does, however. His dad was here in 1959 and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, but his wife as well, and so they'll qualify. I can tell you, like you say all the time, the amount of folks that we would call non-ADOS was less than a decimal. They weren't here in 1990. They simply were not here. Black folks in this city were redlined in what we call the 5th Ward through the 9th Ward, over by the high school. That's what we were conditioned into and partitioned into in the city of Evanston. There weren't any other groups here besides black folks and white folks. This city was a domestic city where you had a lot of parents or moms that were working in white folks' houses, going on up the North Shore through Wilmette, Winnetka, Kenilworth, so forth and so on. That's changed now. But our fight was to get something on the books and to make it grow. We're not satisfied with this plan by no means, and we're fighting to have it changed, and we're going to have it changed.
Can I ask you a favor? Can you email us at editor@breakingbrown.com, editor@breakingbrown.com, so we can link up with you and get some movement on this, because this is awful. I think it's even awful. Let me ask you this, as somebody that's local in Evanston, They can't get Section 8 straight and everything. And they got, if I just put it up on the screen again, they don't even have the actual document up. They have a draft version of it. They've announced the program. Everybody came out and took pictures. It's not reparations, nor is it the first time we've seen this kind of program nationally. They supposed to be worried about potholes and street lights, and they doing lottery $25,000 grants. Yeah, none of this makes sense. And I think that, when I look, I don't think everybody understands how, to me, awful it is that we've already seen plans like this, and then they called it the first. I have an article in front of me. City policy cost 98-year-old black woman her home. Here's why she won't get it back. This is Thelma, she said. This is a lady named Thelma Glover. And she said, is someone picking me up? I don't have no way to get there. Glover needed a ride to the bank, the grocery in Mount Olive Baptist Church, where she's been a member for 6 decades. She had stopped driving there 3 months before at 98. She supposed it was time. The bulldozers came for Glover and 200 other families, mostly black, in 1970 when Emmanuel Hospital in Portland, this is Portland, Oregon, Emmanuel Hospital officials decided they needed their properties. Glover found a place in East Portland, 8 miles and 2 interstates from her church, her bank, and her friends. Where it ties into Evanston is here. Over the next decade, Portland urban renewal officials plan to spend $96 million on right-to-return programs for families either pushed out or priced out of the inner city. They'll subsidize apartment rentals and help older residents hold on to properties. They'll also provide down payments to buy homes, some of them new in North and Northeast Portland. This is a more thought-out program with more funding, where it's not about taking pictures and saying it's reparations, and it still, as I understand it, had its own issues with people receiving the gifts, because you have the same, I believe, tax issues and income level issues that happen. But what I will say is they didn't call this reparations. It's the same thing, though. It's just better done.
And Tone, you're exactly correct. And we have one alderman, the alderman in the 9th Ward named Cecil Fleming, that is an Everstonian that recognizes that this is not reparations, and she totally disagreed with when it's being called that. But she was one voice out of 8 other aldermen and a mayor that doesn't have any power. Our city is ran by the city manager. The alderman, the mayor is just a figurehead and has a vote. But again, we just wanted to my support was behind getting something on the books. While it's not up to par, and it's certainly not reparations, but it's a start. And when you start somewhere and you end up somewhere different, if it's a benefit to ADOS as a whole.
Caller, you there? Let me say this as I let you go.
Yes, I'm here.
This is the issue, though. If you don't have a Category ADOS, you end up in a place where it's not reparations at all. If you don't have a federal involvement, you end up with cash coming in that's tax still. If you don't have a well thought out plan done by economists and city planners and engineers and activists themselves sat down and really planned this out, you end up where you have a document where there's misspellings, where there's essentially unthought through ways that this has tax implication. Because what they said in their document about why they didn't give cash doesn't match, as I understand it. And I'm not an expert, but I looked at expert statements of it, the way the tax code works. If I give you mortgage assistance on your house, Chase ain't gonna pay the tax on
Detroit's
it.
first ever. So we start here with Detroit's first ever reparations task force introduced. And we look at local reparations across the nation, and we come to an understanding that none of it makes any sense. Thanks so much to James, and thanks to Paradise as well for their support. And I don't think we understand the gravity of how this is being used to avoid reparations discussions, national reparations discussions that need to happen. There was something interesting said in that prior video from March of 21. He said the mayor has no power. It's the city manager that has power. So the mayors in many of these cities don't even have the power over the budgets, but they have the power to appoint these task forces. So the city manager is controlling the budget, and they end up assign any money to Evanston. So y'all took pictures, let the New York Times come in and announce reparations on the equity program, and didn't have anything allocated. Now, in addition, I want you guys to look at this number. It's something interesting about this number. They announced in the Washington Post at 400,000. Then they put in the budget 250 and didn't even have the 250. They had 16,000. So if I today tell my neighbor I'm going to give you reparations, will the New York Times come cover that? And maybe I don't even have any money. No. So why would they cover this? Or would the Washington Post come cover that? Because they're just doing anything now. And we don't know who's behind this. So again, let me make it clear. The original article was about 16 families and 400,000. Then they just randomly came down to 250 and 10 families. And again, we come back to the crux of it, which is they're going to use weed sales where young people are young blacks are going to pay reparations to old blacks, and then young blacks they don't have homes that are 700,000 in Evanston, so they're not going to be beneficiaries, but we're still going to call it reparations. Then even for the older blacks, they're not going to get cash. So when you get 25,000 cash, you can set 5,000 aside and only use the 20. They're going to make you receive it as an in-kind gift, pointing to their belief, meaning the city, meaning whoever organizes, in black defectiveness. We can't manage our own money. So then at that point, you have to use the 25, but you can't sell just your roof. You're responsible for $5,000 in tax. This is a key to take your home. And I'm looking at Evanston as an example of what we see nationwide, just unfunded or small scale equity programs being renamed so that everybody can take pictures. People that should be fixing potholes are worried about taking pictures with the name Reparations Task Force and allowing these media companies to cover up the trillions owed to ADOS. That was never the goal when I testified. And that should never be your goal. And it's okay if you decide to let that be your goal. May your progeny not deal with the consequence of your lack of politics. This is Tone Talks. Please go to tonetalks.net, subscribe, donate, share this video. I just wanted to come to you, have a discussion, and just explain how these local task force that are calling themselves Reparations Task Force are just equity programs. Thank you.